Jake Morrison wiped down his tattoo station at Black Rose Tattoo, his shop in Portland's Alberta Arts District. It was 4:30 p.m. on a rainy Thursday afternoon in October, the kind of gray, drizzly day that was quintessentially Portland. The shop had been steady, but not overwhelming. He'd completed 2 tattoos that day, and his apprentice Maya had done 1 small piece. Black Rose had been Jake's dream for years before he'd finally opened it, 8 years ago. He'd apprenticed for 3 years, worked as a professional artist for 5 more, saved every dollar he could, and finally bought out a retiring artist's shop space. Now at 34, Jake had built Black Rose into one of Portland's respected tattoo studios, known for quality work, artistic integrity, and a welcoming environment. The front door chimed as someone entered. Jake looked up to see a young woman, maybe late 20s, standing hesitantly in the doorway. She was thin, too thin, with long brown hair, wearing jeans and a hoodie despite the mild temperature. What immediately struck Jake was her body language. She looked terrified. "Hi, welcome to Black Rose," Jake said warmly, trying to put her at ease. "I'm Jake, the owner. Can I help you with something?" The woman glanced behind her at the street, then back at Jake. I want to get a tattoo. Today, if possible. Do you have time?" "Depends on what you're looking for," Jake said. "I've got some time this afternoon. What are you thinking?" She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket with shaking hands. "I drew a design. I want this, exactly like this, on my forearm." Jake took the paper and unfolded it. The design showed a clock face, showing 3:47, surrounded by detailed roses and ornate scrollwork. It was actually quite well drawn. Clearly the woman had some artistic ability. "This is really nice," Jake said, studying it. "Did you draw this yourself?" "Yes." "Can you do it today? Right now?" There was urgency in her voice that seemed odd for a tattoo. Most people didn't rush into permanent body art. Jake looked at her more carefully. She had a fading bruise on her jaw, barely visible under makeup. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She kept glancing at the door as if expecting someone to walk in. "Let me ask a few questions first," Jake said. "Have you eaten today? You seem a little shaky." "I'm fine. Can you do the tattoo or not?" Jake's instincts were pinging. Something was very wrong. "Sure, I can do it, but let me look at the design more carefully to give you a price." He held the paper up to the light, examining the details. That's when he saw it. Hidden in the ornate scrollwork, written in tiny letters barely visible unless you were looking for them, were words, "Help trapped, call 911. Jake's blood ran cold. He looked at the woman, whose eyes were pleading silently with him. She was asking for help the only way she could, by hiding a message in a tattoo design, hoping the artist would notice. Jake kept his expression neutral, not wanting to alert anyone who might be watching. "Okay, I can definitely do this. Let me just go grab some supplies from the back. Have a seat and I'll be right back." He walked calmly to the back room where Maya was organizing equipment. The moment he was out of sight from the front, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "911's? What's your emergency?" "This is Jake Morrison at Black Rose Tattoo on Alberta Street. A woman just came into my shop with a tattoo design that has help trapped, call 911 hidden in it. She seems terrified and has visible bruising. I think she's a domestic violence victim trying to get help without alerting her abuser. Is she in immediate danger right now? I don't know. She keeps looking at the door like someone might come in. She's shaking and clearly scared. Stay with her. Keep her calm. Officers are being dispatched now. Don't alert anyone that you've called police." Jake hung up and returned to the front where the woman was sitting rigidly in the waiting area. "Okay, I can do this piece for you. It'll take about 2 hours and cost $300. That work for you?" "I don't have that much money," she said quietly, tears forming. "I only have $50, please. I need this tattoo today." "How about we work something out?" Jake said gently. "Why don't you come back to my station and we'll figure it out?" He led her to his private tattooing station, separated from the front by a partial wall that provided some privacy. Once they were away from the front windows, Jake spoke quietly. "I saw the message in your design. I've called the police. They're on their way. You're safe here. Can you tell me your name?" The woman's face crumpled, and she started crying. "Rebecca. My name is Rebecca Thompson. He's going to kill me. I know he is. He said if I ever tried to leave or tell anyone, he'd kill me and make it look like an accident. I didn't know how to get help. He watches me constantly. This was the only way I could think of. Who is he?" "Marcus. Marcus Williams. My boyfriend. We've been together for 3 years, and it's gotten so bad. He beats me. He controls everything. My phone, my money, where I go, who I talk to. I'm basically a prisoner. Today he had to go to work, and I knew I had a few hours. I drew the tattoo design yesterday and hid the message in it, hoping someone would see it and help me. Where is Marcus now?" "At work. He works at a warehouse downtown. But he'll be home by 6, if I'm not back by then." She couldn't finish the sentence. "You're not going back," Jake said firmly. "The police are coming. They're going to protect you. But Marcus will find out I called for help. He'll kill me. He has guns. He's told me exactly how he'd do it, make it look like a break-in, or an accident, or suicide. He's got it all planned. That's not going to happen. The police deal with domestic violence all the time. They have protocols to protect victims. Within 5 minutes, 2 Portland police officers arrived, followed quickly by Detective Sarah Chen from the Domestic Violence Unit. They'd been instructed to enter discreetly so as not to draw attention from anyone who might be watching the shop. Detective Chen sat down with Rebecca in Jake's private station, while Jake and the officers stayed nearby. Chen was experienced, calm, and specialized in domestic violence cases. "Rebecca, I'm Detective Chen. You're safe here. I need you to tell me everything about your situation with Marcus Williams. Take your time." Through tears and halting words, Rebecca Thompson told Detective Chen about 3 years of escalating abuse that had transformed her from an independent, confident woman into someone living in constant fear. Rebecca had met Marcus Williams at a coffee shop 3 years ago. He'd been charming, attentive, seemingly perfect. They dated for 6 months before moving in together, and initially, everything was wonderful, but gradually, Marcus's behavior had changed. It started with small things. He didn't like Rebecca's friends, thought they were bad influences. He preferred she spend time with him rather than going out with girlfriends. Could she maybe check in more frequently when she was out, just so he wouldn't worry? "I thought it was sweet that he cared so much," Rebecca said. "I didn't recognize it as controlling behavior. By the time I did, I was isolated. He'd convinced me to stop seeing friends, to quit my job because he made enough money for both of us, to rely entirely on him." Then the physical abuse started. An argument about dinner led to Marcus pushing Rebecca. He apologized profusely, bought her flowers, promised it would never happen again. But it did happen again, and progressively worse. "He'd hit me, then apologize and say it was my fault for making him angry," Rebecca explained. "He said if I just behaved better, if I didn't provoke him, he wouldn't lose control. I started believing him. I thought the abuse was my fault." Marcus controlled every aspect of Rebecca's life. He monitored her phone, tracked her location through GPS apps, gave her a small allowance but controlled all finances. He forbade her from working or having independent money. He isolated her from family. Rebecca's parents lived across the country, and Marcus had convinced her to limit contact with them, claiming they disapproved of their relationship. "I have no job, no money, nowhere to go," Rebecca said. "I'm completely dependent on him. I've tried to leave twice. Both times he found me within hours. He has tracking apps on my phone I can't delete. Both times he beat me worse than ever and threatened to kill me if I tried again." The abuse had escalated dramatically in recent months. Marcus had become increasingly paranoid and violent. He'd acquired firearms and would wave them around during arguments, threatening Rebecca. He'd told her explicitly how he'd kill her if she ever betrayed him. "He said he'd shoot me and stage it to look like a robbery," Rebecca said, shaking. "He's researched it. He knows how to avoid leaving evidence. He's told me in detail exactly how he'd do it. I genuinely believe he'll kill me. Not might, will. It's just a matter of when I do something that sets him off." Yesterday, Marcus had beaten Rebecca severely for burning dinner. In the process, he'd said something that terrified her even more than usual. "I'm getting tired of this. Tired of you. Maybe it's time to end things permanently." Rebecca had understood the threat. Marcus was planning to kill her soon. She had to escape immediately or she'd die. "This morning Marcus left for work and gave me permission to go grocery shopping," Rebecca explained. "He usually doesn't let me leave the apartment without him, but he needed me to get food for dinner. I knew I had maybe 4 hours before he'd come home. I'd drawn the tattoo design yesterday, hiding the help message in it. I thought maybe if I went to a tattoo shop, the artist would see the message and call police. It was the only way I could think of to ask for help without Marcus knowing. He checks my phone, my computer, everything. But he wouldn't think anything of me going to a tattoo shop, because he can't control what I tell someone in person." She looked at Jake with desperate gratitude. "You saw the message. You believed me. You called for help. Thank you." Detective Chen documented everything Rebecca said, photographed her visible bruises, and explained what would happen next. "Rebecca, we're going to arrest Marcus Williams for domestic violence. You're not going back to that apartment. We have shelters and resources for domestic violence victims. You'll have a safe place to stay while we process Marcus's arrest and build the case against him. But he'll get out on bail," Rebecca said fearfully. "He has money saved. He'll post bail and come after me. He'll kill me. We're going to request high bail and a no-contact order," Chen explained. "And we're going to build a strong case so he stays in custody. You'll also have access to victim advocates who'll help you navigate this process and ensure your safety." Chen called for additional units to go to Marcus Williams's workplace and arrest him before he could return home and discover Rebecca was missing. She also arranged for a domestic violence advocate to meet with Rebecca and help her access emergency shelter. "Rebecca, you did something incredibly brave today," Chen said. "Many domestic violence victims feel too trapped or scared to ask for help. You found a creative way to signal distress. That took courage." "I just didn't want to die," Rebecca whispered. Portland police, coordinated by Detective Chen, moved quickly to arrest Marcus Williams before he could discover that Rebecca had escaped and asked for help. Officers went to the warehouse where Marcus worked, arriving just before his shift ended at 5:30 p.m.
Marcus Williams was a tall, muscular man with an imposing physical presence. He'd worked at the warehouse for 5 years and was known as a reliable, normal employee. Co-workers would later express shock at his arrest. They'd had no idea Marcus was abusing his girlfriend. That's how domestic abusers often operate, Chen explained later. They maintain a normal public persona while being violent in private. Marcus's co-workers saw him as a regular guy. They had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. When officers approached Marcus in the warehouse parking lot and informed him he was under arrest for domestic violence, his reaction was telling. First, surprise. Then, cold calculation. "Where's Rebecca?" were his first words. "What did that bitch tell you?" "Sir, you're under arrest for assault, domestic violence, unlawful imprisonment, and terroristic threats. You have the right to remain silent." "She's lying," Marcus said as officers cuffed him. "Whatever she told you is lies. She's crazy. She hurts herself and blames me. You've got this all wrong." But officers had Rebecca's detailed statement, photographs of her injuries, and the documented pattern of calls to their apartment complex about disturbances. Marcus's denials were futile. At the police station, Detective Chen interviewed Marcus. Initially, he continued denying everything, claiming Rebecca was mentally unstable and fabricating abuse allegations. But when confronted with the evidence, Rebecca's injuries, her detailed account of years of abuse, the timeline of escalating violence, Marcus's strategy shifted. He began minimizing rather than denying. "Okay, we've had some fights," Marcus admitted. "Couples fight. Sometimes things get physical, but I never seriously hurt her. She's exaggerating, making it sound worse than it is." "Marcus, Rebecca has bruises consistent with being beaten. She has documented injuries from multiple incidents. She described in detail the threats you've made against her life. This isn't couples fighting. This is systematic domestic violence. She provokes me," Marcus said, his facade slipping to reveal anger beneath. "She doesn't listen. She doesn't do what she's supposed to. She makes me angry. I wouldn't lose control if she just behaved." Classic abuser mentality, blaming the victim for the abuse. Chen had heard it countless times in her career. "Marcus, you're facing serious charges: assault, domestic violence, terroristic threats, unlawful imprisonment. You're looking at significant prison time. If you have any hope of a lighter sentence, I'd suggest you take responsibility for your actions." But Marcus refused to acknowledge wrongdoing. In his mind, he'd been justified in controlling and hurting Rebecca because she'd provoked him. That mindset would ultimately work against him at trial. Meanwhile, Rebecca was taken to a secure domestic violence shelter where she'd have safe housing while the case proceeded. The shelter provided not just housing but comprehensive services, trauma counseling, legal advocacy, assistance applying for protective orders, help accessing benefits and resources to rebuild her life. "You're safe here," the shelter director assured Rebecca. "Marcus doesn't know where this location is. We have security measures. You can begin healing without fear." For the first time in 3 years, Rebecca went to sleep without being terrified. She was free. Detective Chen worked to build a comprehensive case against Marcus Williams. Domestic violence cases could be challenging to prosecute. Often it was the victim's word against the abusers, and traumatized victims sometimes struggled to testify or recanted under pressure. But Rebecca's case had several strong elements. Physical evidence. Current injuries documented by police and medical examination. Prior medical records showing Rebecca had sought treatment for injuries Marcus had inflicted, with suspicious patterns. Multiple ER visits with injuries explained as accidents. Photographs of injuries from various incidents that Rebecca had secretly taken and hidden online. Witness testimony. Neighbors who'd heard screaming and violence from the apartment. Rebecca's former friends and family who could testify about Marcus's isolating behavior. Co-workers from Rebecca's previous job who'd noticed bruises before she quit. Electronic evidence. Text messages from Marcus to Rebecca showing controlling and threatening language. Location tracking data showing Marcus monitoring Rebecca's every movement. Financial records proving Marcus controlled all money and gave Rebecca no independence. Pattern of behavior. Police had been called to the apartment 3 times over 2 years for disturbances, though Rebecca had been too scared to press charges at the time. Documentation of Marcus's escalating violence and increasingly explicit threats. Rebecca's testimony, detailed, consistent account of 3 years of abuse, specific descriptions of incidents, threats and Marcus's controlling behavior, the creative method she'd used to ask for help, the hidden message in the tattoo design, demonstrated her fear was genuine. Someone making false allegations wouldn't need such an elaborate way to contact police. The hidden message in the tattoo design is actually compelling evidence, the prosecutor explained to Rebecca. It shows you were so controlled and afraid that you couldn't simply call police or tell someone directly. You had to devise a creative, secret way to ask for help. That demonstrates the level of control and fear Marcus had created. The prosecutor, District Attorney Michael Rodriguez, had extensive experience with domestic violence cases. He was determined to ensure Marcus faced serious consequences. Domestic violence often escalates to murder, Rodriguez told his team. Rebecca said Marcus was planning to kill her. I believe her. If Jake Morrison hadn't noticed that hidden message and called police, Rebecca Thompson might be dead right now. This case is attempted murder waiting to happen, and we need to treat it as such. Marcus was charged with multiple counts of assault, domestic violence, habitual offender enhancement due to pattern, unlawful imprisonment, terroristic threats, coercion, stalking. He faced up to 20 years in prison if convicted on all counts. Marcus's attorney tried to get bail reduced, arguing Marcus was a working man with no prior criminal record. The prior police calls to the apartment hadn't resulted in arrests. But the prosecution argued Marcus was an extreme danger to Rebecca and had explicitly threatened to kill her. Your Honor, Rebecca Thompson told police that Marcus Williams has detailed plans to murder her and make it look like an accident, Rodriguez argued at the bail hearing. He has firearms. He's made explicit threats. If he's released, Rebecca's life is in immediate danger. We request high bail and strict no-contact orders. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, set bail at $500,000, far more than Marcus could afford. He'd remain in custody pending trial. Rebecca's journey to recovery was complex and non-linear. Years of abuse had left deep psychological scars that wouldn't heal quickly or easily. Domestic violence creates profound trauma, explained her therapist, Dr. Jennifer Martinez. Rebecca experienced ongoing physical violence, psychological manipulation, isolation, and threats to her life. That kind of sustained trauma changes how your brain processes safety, trust, and relationships. Recovery takes time. Initially, Rebecca struggled with guilt and self-blame, common reactions for abuse survivors. I should have left sooner, she told Dr. Martinez. I should have seen the warning signs before moving in with him. I should have asked for help earlier. This is partly my fault. None of this is your fault, Dr. Martinez said firmly. Marcus chose to abuse you. You didn't cause that. Abusers are skilled at manipulation. They isolate victims gradually, undermine their confidence, create dependency. You were systematically trapped in a situation designed to be difficult to escape. The fault lies entirely with Marcus, not with you. Rebecca also struggled with fear despite being in a secure shelter. She had nightmares about Marcus finding her and killing her. She startled at loud noises. She was hyper-vigilant, constantly checking locks and windows. She struggled to trust anyone, even the counselors and advocates trying to help her. Hypervigilance is normal after experiencing ongoing threats, Dr. Martinez explained. Your brain learned that danger was constant. Even though you're safe now, your nervous system is still in threat mode. With time and therapy, that will decrease. Dr. Martinez used trauma-focused therapy specifically designed for domestic violence survivors. The therapy focused on processing the trauma and reducing PTSD symptoms, rebuilding self-esteem that Marcus had systematically destroyed, challenging the false beliefs Marcus had instilled, that the abuse was her fault, that she was worthless, that she couldn't survive without him. Who was Rebecca before Marcus? Dr. Martinez asked during one session. Rebecca had to think hard. I was confident. I had friends. I had a job I liked. I was independent. I liked art and hiking and reading. I haven't done any of those things in 3 years. I became just what Marcus wanted me to be. Quiet, obedient, invisible. Let's work on helping you reconnect with that person. The confident, independent Rebecca still exists. She's been suppressed, but she's not gone. Gradually, Rebecca began to reclaim herself. She started drawing again. She'd been artistic before meeting Marcus, but he discouraged it, saying it was a waste of time. She began reading voraciously. She connected with other survivors in group therapy, finding strength in shared experiences. The shelter helped Rebecca access resources she'd need to rebuild independently. She applied for benefits to cover basic needs. She enrolled in community college to gain job skills. She began the process of getting a protection order against Marcus. She reconnected with family. Her parents flew out from Ohio to visit and were shocked at what Rebecca had endured. "Why didn't you tell us?" her mother asked, crying. "We would have helped you. We would have brought you home. Marcus convinced me you disapproved of our relationship and didn't want to hear from me," Rebecca explained. "He screened my calls and emails. He isolated me from you gradually. By the time I realized what was happening, I felt too ashamed to tell you I'd been so stupid." "You weren't stupid," her father said firmly. "You were abused. That's not your fault." Having family support made an enormous difference in Rebecca's recovery. Her parents offered for her to move back to Ohio, but Rebecca decided to stay in Portland. She wanted to rebuild her life on her own terms, rather than retreating to her childhood home. Marcus Williams's trial began 7 months after his arrest. He'd been in custody the entire time, unable to make the high bail. That time in jail had only increased his anger. He blamed Rebecca for his incarceration, refused to take responsibility for his actions, and remained convinced he'd been justified in his treatment of her. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of systematic abuse, spanning 3 years. Rebecca testified for 2 days, describing the relationship's progression from initially wonderful, to controlling, to violent. She detailed specific incidents of abuse, the ways Marcus had isolated and controlled her, and the explicit threats he'd made against her life. "He told me he'd kill me and make it look like a robbery," Rebecca testified. "He said he knew how to avoid leaving evidence. He said no one would suspect him because he'd play the grieving boyfriend. He had it all planned out. I genuinely believed he was going to murder me. That's why I hid the message in the tattoo design. I was desperate to get help without him knowing, because I believed if he found out I'd told anyone, he'd kill me immediately. The defense attorney tried to undermine Rebecca's credibility, suggesting she was exaggerating or fabricating abuse allegations out of spite. "Isn't it true you and Mr. Williams argued frequently, that your relationship was mutually combative?" "No," Rebecca said firmly. "Marcus beat me. I didn't hit him back. I couldn't. He's 6 feet tall and weighs 200 pounds. I'm 5'4" and weigh 115. There was no mutual combat. He abused me, and I survived." Jake Morrison testified about the day Rebecca came to his tattoo shop. He described her fearful demeanor, the hidden message in her design, and his decision to call police immediately. "I've been a tattoo artist for 13 years, Jake testified. "I've seen thousands of customers." Rebecca was different. She was terrified. "When I saw the hidden message in her design, I knew immediately she was asking for help in the only way she could. I called 911 without hesitation because I believed her life was in danger." Detective Chen testified about her investigation, the evidence she'd gathered, and the pattern of escalating abuse she'd documented. "In my 15 years investigating domestic violence, I've seen this pattern many times. The abuse escalates gradually. The victim becomes increasingly isolated and controlled. The abuser makes explicit threats of murder. Often these cases end in homicide if intervention doesn't occur. Rebecca Thompson would likely be dead if she hadn't found a way to ask for help, and if Jake Morrison hadn't recognized her plea." Neighbors testified about hearing screaming and sounds of violence from the apartment. Rebecca's former friends testified about how Marcus had systematically isolated her. Medical professionals testified about injuries Rebecca had sustained that were consistent with abuse. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Williams had systematically abused, controlled, and terrorized Rebecca Thompson for 3 years, with violence escalating to the point where he was planning to murder her. Marcus took the stand in his own defense against his attorney's advice. He couldn't resist defending himself, convinced he could persuade the jury he'd been justified. But his testimony backfired spectacularly. Under cross-examination, his true nature emerged. "Mr. Williams, you texted Rebecca saying if you ever leave me, I'll kill you. Is that correct? I was angry when I sent that. I didn't mean it literally. You also told her you had detailed plans for how you'd murder her and make it look like an accident. Is that true? I was just trying to scare her into behaving. She needed to understand there were consequences for disrespecting me." The prosecutor pounced. "Consequences for disrespecting you? You believe Rebecca deserved to be threatened with death for disrespecting you. She needed to learn her place," Marcus said, his mask slipping entirely. "A man has a right to control his own household. She was my girlfriend. She should have obeyed me." The jury's expressions showed exactly what they thought of that attitude. Several jurors looked disgusted. The prosecutor continued. "You isolated Rebecca from friends and family, didn't you? Her friends were bad influences. Her family didn't like me. I was protecting our relationship. You controlled all the money, giving her only a small allowance? I was the breadwinner. It was my money. I decided how it was spent. You tracked her location constantly through GPS apps. I had a right to know where she was. You beat her multiple times, causing injuries documented by medical professionals. She provoked me. If she'd just listened and behaved, I wouldn't have gotten angry, and you threatened to kill her. I didn't mean it. I was just keeping her in line."
Marcus's testimony revealed exactly what the prosecution wanted the jury to see. An unrepentant abuser who believed he had the right to control, hurt, and terrorize his partner. He showed no remorse, no understanding that his behavior was criminal, no empathy for Rebecca's suffering. The defense attorney tried damage control in redirect examination, but the harm was done. Marcus had demonstrated to the jury that he was a dangerous, controlling abuser with no remorse. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Marcus showed no emotion as the verdicts were read, but his eyes found Rebecca in the courtroom, and the look he gave her was pure hatred and threat. At sentencing 2 weeks later, Rebecca provided a victim impact statement. "Marcus Williams controlled every aspect of my life for 3 years. He isolated me from everyone who cared about me. He beat me, threatened me, and terrorized me daily. He told me explicitly that he planned to kill me. I lived in constant fear, believing every day might be the day he finally murdered me. I'm free now because a tattoo artist paid attention to a hidden message I put in a design and called police. If Jake Morrison hadn't noticed, I would likely be dead. Marcus had detailed plans to kill me. He had the means and the motivation. It was only a matter of time." Marcus still shows no remorse. He still believes he was justified in abusing me. He still blames me for his actions. He's dangerous, and will hurt whoever his next partner is if given the chance. I want him in prison for as long as possible, not just to protect me but to protect every woman he might victimize in the future. He deserves the maximum sentence. Judge Patricia Morrison sentenced Marcus Williams to 18 years in prison, the maximum allowed under sentencing guidelines for the charges he'd been convicted of. "Williams, you are a dangerous domestic abuser who terrorized Rebecca Thompson for 3 years, Morrison said. You systematically destroyed her independence, isolated her, controlled her, beat her, and threatened to murder her. You showed no remorse. You demonstrated in your testimony that you believe you were justified in your actions. You are a danger to any partner you might have in the future. The 18-year sentence reflects the severity of your crimes and society's commitment to protecting victims of domestic violence. Marcus was led out of the courtroom in shackles. Rebecca, watching him go, felt an enormous weight lift. She was truly, finally free. Jake Morrison found himself processing the experience in the days and weeks after testifying at Marcus's trial. He'd always considered himself an aware, socially conscious person, but he'd never imagined his tattoo shop would become a place where someone asked for help through a hidden message in a design. "I keep thinking about all the ways Rebecca's plan could have failed," Jake told his partner Chris one evening. "What if I'd been too busy to take a walk in? What if I'd just glanced at the design and not looked closely? What if I'd seen the message but dismissed it as an art project or something? She'd have gone back to Marcus and he probably would have killed her. But you weren't too busy. You did look closely. You did recognize it as a cry for help and you acted immediately," Chris reminded him. "Rebecca is alive and safe because of that. I just happened to see it. It was luck. It wasn't just luck. You paid attention to a customer who seemed scared. You looked carefully at the design she brought. You trusted your instincts that something was wrong. And you called 911 without hesitation. Those were all choices you made. Good choices that saved someone's life." The experience changed how Jake approached his work. He'd always believed tattoo artists had a certain responsibility to their clients, ensuring clean equipment, understanding what tattoos meant to people, creating a safe space. But now he understood tattoo shops could be places where people sought help in creative ways. Jake began educating himself about domestic violence, the warning signs, the dynamics, the resources available to victims. He put up posters in the shop about domestic violence hotlines. He trained his staff to recognize concerning behaviors and know how to respond. "We're tattoo artists, not social workers," Jake told Maya and his other staff. "But people trust us with their bodies and their stories. Sometimes we're in a position to help someone in crisis. Rebecca taught me that we need to pay attention and be willing to act when someone needs help." Jake's story made local news. Tattoo artist Sharp Eye saves domestic violence victim. Other tattoo shops in Portland reached out, wanting to know how to train their staff similarly. Jake developed a simple one-page guide for tattoo artists. Warning signs: a client might need help, appears fearful or anxious, has visible injuries, bruises, burns, defensive wounds, seems controlled or monitored by someone with them, doesn't speak for themselves, companion answers for them, seems to lack resources, no phone, no money, no ID, brings a design or says something that hints at danger. What to do? Trust your instincts if something feels wrong. Create a private moment to speak with the client alone if possible. Ask if they're safe or if they need help. Call 911 if you believe someone is in immediate danger. Have domestic violence hotline numbers visible in your shop. Don't confront potential abusers or put yourself in danger. Document what you observe and report to authorities. Tattoo shops are often seen as alternative, safe spaces, Jake explained to other artists at a Portland tattoo collective meeting. "People come to us when they want to make permanent changes to their bodies. Sometimes they're also looking for help with other permanent changes, like escaping abuse. We need to be aware and responsive." The guide was shared among Portland's tattoo community and eventually distributed nationally through tattoo industry associations. Over the following years, there were several documented cases where tattoo artists recognized clients in danger and connected them with help. Jake's intervention didn't just save Rebecca, said domestic violence advocate Maria Santos. It raised awareness throughout the tattoo industry that artists might encounter abuse victims seeking help. That awareness has led to other interventions and lives saved. Jake stayed in contact with Rebecca, checking in periodically to see how she was doing. He felt a connection to her, not romantic or paternalistic, but the bond that comes from being part of someone's survival story. "You gave me a chance to rebuild my life," Rebecca told Jake during one coffee meetup months after the trial. "The tattoo design with the hidden message was my desperate last attempt to get help. If you hadn't seen it, I don't know what would have happened. Probably Marcus would have killed me. You saved my life by paying attention. You saved yourself by being brave enough to ask for help," Jake countered. "That design, that hidden message, that was creative and courageous. I just happened to notice and make a phone call." "Don't minimize what you did," Rebecca said firmly. "Lots of people might have noticed but not cared, or not believed me, or not wanted to get involved. You did all three. You noticed, you believed, and you got involved immediately. That's why I'm alive." 18 months after her rescue, Rebecca Thompson had rebuilt a life she barely recognized in the best possible way. She was living independently in a small apartment, working as a graphic designer. Her artistic skills that Marcus had suppressed were now her career, and slowly reconnecting with the confident person she'd been before Marcus. "I'm still healing," Rebecca told Dr. Martinez during a therapy check-in. "I still have moments of fear or anxiety,
I still sometimes have nightmares about Marcus, but I'm so much better than I was. I'm independent. I'm safe. I'm building a life on my own terms. Rebecca had completed her associate's degree in graphic design and was working for a small creative agency. She'd reconnected with old friends and made new ones. She'd even started dating again, cautiously, with firm boundaries, but allowing herself to be vulnerable with someone new. It's hard to trust after what I experienced, Rebecca admitted. I'm hyper-aware of any controlling behaviors, any red flags. My new boyfriend, Tyler, is incredibly patient and understanding. He knows my history and respects my boundaries. It's a completely different dynamic than with Marcus. Rebecca had also become involved in domestic violence advocacy. She volunteered at the shelter that had housed her, providing peer support to newly escaped victims. She spoke at community events about recognizing and escaping abuse. I want other women to know that if I could escape after 3 years of severe abuse, they can too, Rebecca told audiences. It's terrifying to leave. I understand that. You feel trapped, dependent, scared. But there are people and organizations that will help you. You don't have to stay in danger. Rebecca's story about the hidden message in the tattoo design resonated particularly strongly. Many people hadn't considered that abuse victims might need creative, covert ways to ask for help because their abusers monitored them so closely. When you're being abused by someone who controls your phone, computer, and movements, you can't just call a hotline or tell a friend, Rebecca explained. You have to find other ways. For me, it was hiding a message in a tattoo design. For others, it might be leaving a note somewhere, using a code word with family, or finding a moment alone with someone who seems safe. Victims are often incredibly creative in signaling distress. We need people to be observant enough to notice those signals. Rebecca also worked to educate people about the dynamics of domestic violence, why victims don't just leave, how abuse escalates gradually, how isolation works, why victims often blame themselves. People ask me why I didn't leave sooner, as if it's simple, Rebecca told a college class studying domestic violence. But Marcus didn't start by beating me. He started by being charming and wonderful. Then gradually he became controlling. So gradually I didn't notice the transition. By the time the physical abuse started, I was already isolated and dependent. And when I did try to leave, he threatened to kill me and demonstrated he had the means to do it. Leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time. That's when many victims are murdered. People need to understand it's not simple. Rebecca and Jake's story sparked a broader conversation about creative ways abuse victims might signal for help and the importance of ordinary people recognizing those signals. The hidden message in tattoo design case became a training example for various professionals, healthcare providers, trained to recognize that patients might communicate abuse through subtle signals, certain phrases, drawings, written notes, or behaviors, especially when accompanied by controlling partners. Service industry workers, tattoo artists, hairstylists, nail technicians, and others who work with clients in semi-private settings were trained to recognize abuse indicators and know how to respond. Educators, teachers, and school staff learned that students experiencing abuse at home might signal through art, writing, or behavior rather than direct disclosure. General public awareness campaigns taught people to pay attention to signs that someone might be in danger and empowered them to report concerns. Rebecca's case highlighted that abuse victims are often desperate to get help but unable to ask directly, explained domestic violence expert Dr. Patricia Chen. They might leave clues, use codes, or signal in creative ways. We need communities where people are observant, where those signals are recognized and taken seriously. The case also reinforced the importance of believing victims when they do disclose abuse. Jake hadn't dismissed Rebecca's hidden message as overreaction or imagination. He'd taken it seriously immediately. One of the biggest barriers to victims getting help is fear they won't be believed, said victim advocate Jennifer Martinez. Jake believed Rebecca instantly and acted without hesitation. That's the response every victim needs: immediate belief and support, not skepticism or dismissal. Domestic violence organizations used Rebecca's story in their materials, showing that abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of education or background. Victims often need creative ways to ask for help due to abuser monitoring. Leaving is dangerous and requires planning and support. Community awareness and willingness to act saves lives. The Portland Police Department incorporated Rebecca's case into their domestic violence training, emphasizing the importance of taking hidden cries for help seriously, understanding the danger level when victims make escape attempts, recognizing that abusers' threats to kill victims are often genuine, coordinating rapid response to protect victims who've signaled distress. Jake Morrison's immediate 911 call allowed us to respond before Marcus Williams discovered Rebecca had escaped, Detective Chen told trainees. That timing was critical. If Rebecca had gone back to the apartment and Marcus realized she'd tried to get help, he likely would have killed her immediately. The rapid response Jake triggered saved her life. 5 years after Jake found the hidden message in Rebecca's tattoo design, They marked the anniversary with a public event at Black Rose Tattoo focused on domestic violence awareness. Rebecca, now 33 and thriving in her career and personal life, spoke about her journey from victim to survivor to advocate. 5 years ago, I walked into this tattoo shop terrified and desperate. I'd hidden a plea for help in a design, gambling that someone would notice and care. Jake noticed and cared. He called police immediately. That decision saved my life. She described the 5 years since, the trauma recovery, rebuilding independence, reconnecting with herself, and ultimately finding purpose in helping other survivors. Marcus tried to destroy me, but he failed. I'm stronger than he thought. I've built a life I love, career, friends, a healthy relationship, meaningful work, helping other survivors. That's my revenge, living well. Jake spoke about how that day had changed his understanding of his role as a tattoo artist and community member. I thought I was just a tattoo artist who did good work and created a welcoming space. Rebecca taught me that sometimes we're in a position to do more, to recognize when someone needs help and act on it. I've trained my staff on domestic violence indicators. We've put up resources in our shop. We've created an environment where if someone needs help, they can find it here. Detective Chen, who'd investigated Rebecca's case and arrested Marcus, spoke about the importance of community awareness. Law enforcement can't be everywhere. We rely on community members like Jake, who notice concerning situations and report them. Jake's phone call allowed us to intervene before Rebecca was killed. That's the power of an aware, engaged community. The event raised funds for local domestic violence services and provided education about recognizing and responding to abuse. Attendees included domestic violence survivors, advocates, law enforcement, healthcare providers, and community members wanting to learn how to help. During a Q&A session, someone asked Rebecca, "Do you ever regret not leaving Marcus sooner?" "I used to," Rebecca answered honestly. "I spent months in therapy dealing with guilt about staying as long as I did. But my therapist helped me understand that I wasn't weak or stupid for staying. I was trapped in a situation designed to be difficult to escape. Marcus deliberately isolated me, made me dependent, and threatened to kill me if I left. Asking why didn't you leave sooner puts responsibility on victims rather than abusers. The question should be why did Marcus abuse Rebecca, not why did Rebecca stay. The fault lies with the person choosing violence, not the person surviving it." Another person asked Jake, "What would you tell other business owners or service providers about recognizing abuse?" "Pay attention to your customers or clients," Jake said. "Really see them, not just as transactions but as people. Notice if someone seems scared, controlled, injured, desperate. Trust your instincts if something feels wrong. And don't be afraid to ask if someone needs help or to call authorities if you believe someone's in danger. The worst outcome of calling is you're wrong, and someone's embarrassed. The worst outcome of not calling is someone dies. Those aren't equivalent risks." After the event, Jake and Rebecca stood together in the shop where everything had begun 5 years ago. The tattoo station where Jake had been sitting when Rebecca handed him the design. The door through which she'd entered, terrified and desperate. The phone Jake had used to call 911. "This place saved my life," Rebecca said, looking around. "I didn't even want a tattoo. I'd never gotten one before. I just needed a reason to go somewhere Marcus wouldn't question, somewhere I could pass a message to someone who might help. I chose a tattoo shop because I thought maybe an artist would look carefully at a design. I was right. Have you ever gotten an actual tattoo?" Jake asked. "No," Rebecca admitted. "After everything, I never came back for one. Too many other things to deal with. Would you want one now? To commemorate surviving, not the abuse itself." Rebecca considered. "Maybe. What would you suggest?" Jake thought for a moment. "A phoenix, rising from ashes, representing rebirth and strength after destruction." Rebecca smiled. "I like that. Let's do it." An hour later, Rebecca had her first tattoo, a phoenix design on her forearm, symbolizing her transformation from victim to survivor, her rising from the ashes of abuse to build a new life. As Jake worked, Rebecca reflected, 5 years ago, I came here with a fake design asking for help. Now I'm here getting a real tattoo celebrating survival. That's full circle." Marcus Williams, serving his 18-year sentence at a medium-security prison in Oregon, had spent 5 years refusing to acknowledge his guilt or recognize the harm he'd caused. "I was railroaded by the system," Marcus told other inmates. "My girlfriend lied about me and got me locked up. I did nothing wrong. She's crazy." Prison counselors who worked with domestic violence offenders tried to engage Marcus in taking responsibility for his actions, but he remained resistant. "You can't rehabilitate someone who doesn't believe they've done anything wrong," said correctional counselor Dr. Robert Martinez. Marcus maintains he was justified in controlling and hurting Rebecca. Until he acknowledges his behavior was criminal and harmful, he can't change. Marcus had been written up several times for disciplinary infractions, mostly for aggressive behavior towards staff and other inmates. He didn't handle authority well and resented being incarcerated. He'd tried to contact Rebecca multiple times despite the no-contact order. He'd sent letters, which were intercepted and never delivered, had other inmates try to reach out to her via social media, and had asked his family to deliver messages. All contact attempts were documented and reported, resulting in additional disciplinary action. Marcus's continued attempts to contact Rebecca demonstrate he remains a threat to her, said his parole officer. Even from prison, he's trying to exert control. When he's eventually released, he'll be considered high risk for reoffending. Rebecca, informed of Marcus's contact attempts, felt validated in her decision to leave. He's still trying to control me from prison. That proves I was right. He's dangerous and obsessed. I'm grateful he's locked up where he can't hurt me. Marcus was eligible for parole after serving 12 years of his 18-year sentence. Rebecca dreaded that day, though it was still 7 years away. I'll be 39 when he gets out. Rebecca told her therapist, I'll have lived more of my life after leaving him than I did with him. But I'm still scared of what happens when he's released. We'll prepare for that when the time comes, Dr. Martinez assured her. You'll have protective orders. Law enforcement will be notified. Victim services will support you. You won't face it alone. 10 years after Jake Morrison found the hidden message that saved Rebecca Thompson's life, their story continued inspiring awareness and action around domestic violence. Rebecca, now 38, had built an impressive career as a graphic designer and had expanded her advocacy work significantly. She'd written a book, Hidden Messages, My Escape from Domestic Violence and Why We Need to Listen, which became a bestseller and was used in domestic violence education programs. 10 years ago, I was convinced I was going to die, Rebecca told an audience at a conference on domestic violence prevention. Marcus had me completely trapped. I couldn't call police, couldn't tell family, couldn't escape. He monitored everything. The hidden message in that tattoo design was my desperate last attempt to get help. If Jake Morrison hadn't noticed, I genuinely believe Marcus would have killed me within weeks. Rebecca's book detailed her 3 years with Marcus, the escalating abuse, her creative attempt to signal for help, and her decade of recovery and rebuilding. It resonated with thousands of readers, survivors who saw their own experiences reflected, family members who better understood abuse dynamics, and professionals who gained insight into victim experiences. Rebecca's story is powerful because it shows the complexity of domestic violence, said Dr. Jennifer Park, who wrote the book's foreword. It shows how abuse develops gradually, how victims become trapped, how leaving is dangerous, and how recovery is possible with proper support. It's essential reading for anyone wanting to understand domestic violence. Jake Morrison, now 44 and still running Black Rose Tattoo, had become a recognized voice on businesses' roles in identifying and responding to abuse. He'd consulted with other service industries, salons, spas, restaurants, about training staff to recognize abuse indicators. Service industry workers interact with people in semi-private settings, where abuse victims might have rare moments away from abusers, Jake explained at a hospitality industry conference. A hairstylist, nail technician, tattoo artist, massage therapist, we have opportunities to notice if someone seems in danger. With basic training, we can recognize warning signs and know how to respond appropriately. Jake's training program, Service Industry Against Domestic Violence, had reached over 50,000 workers across various industries. It led to documented cases where workers identified abuse victims and connected them with help. A hairstylist in Seattle noticed a client had bruises consistent with strangulation and gently asked if she was safe. The client disclosed abuse and was connected with a shelter. A nail technician in Denver recognized that a client's partner was exhibiting controlling behavior in the salon and left a domestic violence hotline card in the client's bag. A massage therapist in Austin noticed defensive wounds on a client and asked privately if she needed help. The client broke down and disclosed ongoing abuse. Not every intervention is as dramatic as Rebecca's, Jake acknowledged. But each one matters. Each victim who gets help is a life potentially saved. The tattoo design that had started everything, the clock showing 3:47 surrounded by roses with a hidden message, had become a symbol of covert cries for help. Domestic violence organizations used an image of it in their materials, and some survivors got versions of it tattooed as symbols of survival. That design represents creativity in crisis, said advocate Maria Rodriguez. It shows that victims find ways to signal distress even when they can't speak directly. We need communities that recognize those signals. As Marcus Williams's parole eligibility approached, Rebecca began preparing for the possibility he might be released. After serving 12 years of his 18-year sentence, Marcus would appear before the parole board. I'm terrified, Rebecca admitted to Dr. Martinez during therapy. Marcus threatened to kill me 10 years ago. He's shown no remorse. He's tried to contact me from prison. If he gets out, I believe he'll come after me. Rebecca had built a good life. She was successful, happy, engaged to Tyler, her boyfriend of 5 years, planning a future. But the specter of Marcus's release threatened to disrupt all that. You're not the same person Marcus abused 10 years ago, Dr. Martinez reminded her. You were isolated, dependent, controlled. Now you're independent, strong, surrounded by support. You have resources, awareness, and people who will protect you. If Marcus is released, you'll face it from a position of strength, not vulnerability. Rebecca prepared a statement for Marcus's parole hearing, explaining why she believed he should remain incarcerated. Marcus Williams remains a danger to me and to any partner he might have in the future. In 10 years of incarceration, he has shown no remorse for abusing me. He has refused to participate meaningfully in rehabilitation programs. He has repeatedly violated the no-contact order by attempting to reach me from prison. His behavior demonstrates he has not changed and would pose a threat if released. 10 years ago, Marcus had detailed plans to murder me. He told me explicitly how he'd do it. That threat hasn't disappeared just because he's been in prison. If anything, his resentment has grown. He blames me for his incarceration rather than taking responsibility for his crimes. I've built a good life in the 10 years since escaping Marcus. I have a career, a healthy relationship, community connections, but I live with ongoing awareness that Marcus might someday be released. That fear affects my daily life. I check locks obsessively. I have security systems. I've had to change my routines and online presence to avoid being easily found. Marcus Williams deserves to serve his full 18-year sentence. He is dangerous, unrepentant, and would very likely hurt me or future partners if given the opportunity. I asked the parole board to deny his release. The parole hearing took place via video conference. Marcus appeared on screen from prison, and Rebecca, accompanied by her victim advocate, watched remotely. She didn't want to be in the same physical space as Marcus, even with security present. During the hearing, Marcus's attorney argued he'd been a model prisoner. False. He had multiple disciplinary infractions and deserved early release. Marcus himself spoke, claiming he'd learned his lesson and just wanted to rebuild his life. But when questioned by the parole board about his understanding of his crimes, Marcus's true colors emerged. "Do you take responsibility for abusing Miss Thompson?" a board member asked. "I was convicted of that, yes," Marcus said carefully. "That's not what I asked. Do you believe you abused her?" Marcus hesitated, then said, "Our relationship was complicated. Things got out of hand sometimes. I regret that. Miss Thompson's medical records show extensive injuries from beatings over 3 years. That's not things getting out of hand. Do you acknowledge you systematically abused her?" "I acknowledge the jury convicted me," Marcus said, unwilling to admit wrongdoing. "Do you believe you pose any risk to Miss Thompson if released?" "No, I've moved on. I have no interest in her anymore." But his tone and demeanor suggested otherwise. There was an edge of resentment and anger when he spoke Rebecca's name. The parole board reviewed Rebecca's statement, the prosecuting attorney's opposition to parole, and Marcus's prison record. After deliberation, they denied parole. "Mr. Williams, you have shown insufficient rehabilitation and continue to minimize the severity of your crimes," the board chair said. "You present an ongoing risk to Miss Thompson and potentially to others. Parole is denied. You will be reviewed again in 3 years." Rebecca, watching remotely, felt overwhelming relief. Marcus would remain in prison for at least 3 more years. She had more time to live without fear.
15 years after Jake Morrison found the hidden message in a tattoo design, Rebecca Thompson, now Rebecca Sterling, having married Tyler 3 years ago, reflected on how one moment had defined and redirected her entire life. 15 years ago, I was being abused daily and believed I was going to die, Rebecca told an interviewer for a documentary about domestic violence survivors. "I couldn't see a future beyond Marcus. I couldn't imagine escaping, rebuilding, thriving. But here I am, happily married, successful career, beautiful home, planning to have children. Marcus tried to destroy me, but I survived and built a life he never could have imagined for me." Rebecca's advocacy work had expanded internationally. Her book had been translated into 12 languages. She'd spoken at conferences worldwide. She'd consulted with governments on domestic violence policy. She'd helped thousands of survivors through her writing, speaking, and direct support work. "I've transformed my victimization into purpose," Rebecca reflected. "That's healing, using your worst experience to help others avoid or survive similar situations. Every survivor I help, every person I educate, every policy I influence, that's me taking power back from Marcus. He tried to make me nothing, but I'm making a meaningful difference in the world." Jake Morrison, now 59, had expanded Black Rose Tattoo to 3 locations and had trained hundreds of artists in recognizing and responding to abuse indicators. His Service Industry Against Domestic Violence program had reached over 200,000 workers in various industries and had led to hundreds of documented interventions. "Rebecca's case taught me that ordinary work can have extraordinary meaning," Jake told the same documentary. "I'm a tattoo artist. I create art on people's bodies. But because I paid attention to one scared customer 15 years ago, I was able to save her life. That experience transformed how I see my role in the community. Every interaction matters. Every person could be someone who needs help." The tattoo design that had started everything, the clock showing 3:47 surrounded by roses with a hidden help message, had become iconic in domestic violence awareness materials. Survivors sometimes got versions of it tattooed as symbols of their own survival. "That design represents hope," said domestic violence expert Dr. Patricia Chen. "It shows that even in the most controlled, dangerous situations, victims find creative ways to ask for help, and it shows that when communities are aware and responsive, those pleas can be heard and acted upon." Marcus Williams, now 54, remained incarcerated. He'd been denied parole 3 more times over 15 years and would serve his full 18-year sentence. Upon release, he'd be subject to strict supervision, mandatory counseling, and lifetime protective orders keeping him away from Rebecca. Marcus will be 60 when released, Rebecca said. I'll be 46. I'll have lived more than double the time since escaping him than I spent with him. The math comforts me. The abusive years become an increasingly small fraction of my total life. I refuse to let 3 years of abuse define 50 years of living. 20 years after Jake Morrison noticed tiny hidden words in a tattoo design and saved Rebecca Thompson's life, their story remained a touchstone in domestic violence awareness and community-based intervention. The numbers told part of the story. Rana Waryu, over 500,000 service industry workers trained through Jake's program, over 2,000 documented cases where trained workers identified abuse victims. Rebecca's book sold over 2 million copies and was used in educational programs worldwide. Countless survivors inspired by Rebecca's story to seek help or leave abusive situations. But the true impact was harder to quantify. The cultural shift toward recognizing that domestic violence victims often need creative ways to signal for help, the increased awareness among community members about abuse indicators, the normalization of asking, "Are you safe?" when someone seems in danger. 20 years ago, a woman hid a message in a tattoo design because she was too controlled and afraid to ask for help directly, said Dr. Jennifer Martinez at a conference commemorating the case. That creative plea for help has inspired a generation of awareness that victims signal distress in various ways, and that communities need to be observant and responsive to those signals. Rebecca Thompson Sterling, now 48 and a grandmother, her stepdaughter had given birth, reflected on 2 decades since her rescue. I could have died at 28. Marcus had plans to kill me. I was convinced my life would end in that apartment, murdered by someone who claimed to love me. But Jake Morrison saw a hidden message and called 911. That one decision gave me 20 years I wouldn't have had. Years where I healed, loved, created, helped others, built a beautiful life. Every day I've lived since is a gift I might not have received. Jake Morrison, now 64 and considering retirement, kept the original tattoo design Rebecca had brought 20 years ago, framed in his office. That piece of paper changed my life as much as it changed Rebecca's. It taught me that paying attention and acting on instincts can save lives. It showed me that ordinary people in ordinary jobs have extraordinary power to help others. I look at it every day and remember, every interaction matters. Every person could be someone who needs help. Every moment of awareness could be the difference between life and death. The clock in Rebecca's original design had shown 3:47, a random time she'd chosen for the design. But the number had taken on meaning. The 3 years she'd endured abuse, the 4 days she had left before Marcus had planned to kill her, though she hadn't known that, the 7 seconds it took Jake to see the hidden message. The time everything changed. The moment a hidden plea was seen and answered. 20 years later, 3:47 had become a symbol in domestic violence awareness, representing victims' creative cries for help and communities' responsive action. T-shirts, awareness materials, and advocacy campaigns used the number as shorthand for paying attention and intervening. On the 20th anniversary, Rebecca and Jake stood together at Black Rose Tattoo, the place where everything had begun, reflecting on 2 decades since one desperate woman and one observant tattoo artist had created a story of survival and hope. 20 years, Rebecca said softly. I was 28 when I walked through that door, terrified and desperate, with a folded piece of paper containing a hidden message. I'm 48 now. I've lived more than twice as long since you saved me than I did before. That's legacy. All those years, all those experiences, all the good I've been able to do. None of it would exist if you hadn't noticed. You gave me the privilege of helping you, Jake replied. You trusted me with that hidden message. You bet your life that a stranger would see it and care. That's incredible courage. I just did what anyone should do. I believed you, and I acted. But that's exactly it, Rebecca said. Anyone should do it. But not everyone does. You did. You saw tiny words hidden in a design. You recognized them as a cry for help. You called 911 immediately. You didn't hesitate, didn't second guess, didn't decide it wasn't your problem. You chose to get involved. That's what saved me. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 people whose lives had intersected in one moment of crisis 20 years ago, and whose partnership had created ripples that spread far beyond their individual stories. One woman's hidden message, one man's observant recognition, one phone call that changed everything, one life saved that day. Thousands more helped in the years since. Industries transformed, awareness raised, communities empowered, a culture of vigilance created, one desperate plea, hidden in art, one artist who looked closely and cared enough to act, one moment that became an enduring legacy. That was always enough, more than enough, everything. This story is dedicated to every service worker, business owner, and community member who pays attention to the people around them, recognizes when someone might be signaling for help, and has the courage to act when intervention is needed. Your awareness protects the vulnerable, and to every person experiencing domestic violence, you are not alone. You deserve safety and support,
and there are people who will believe you and help you.
Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.